Hello, beautiful people. Today is 27th of July. My name is Sahil and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, today we'll see a quote from B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of Indian Constitution. He says that rights are protected not by law but by the social and moral conscience of the society. Hence, in the light of this particular statement or quote, we can say that the institutional sanctity, institutional sanction, and institutional will is only the enabling condition, but the necessary condition lies into the collective conscience of the society. Guys, even if till today Dalits are not getting the equitable rights, it is a failure of the society, the members of the society, rather than the institutional failure. If children are still begging on the streets, if the trafficking is still rampant, and if the vulnerables are not getting their fair due, then more than the institutional failure, it is the failure of the members of the society also. So guys, this particular quote we can use into the social justice related question in GS paper number 2, onto the questions related to the moral conduct by the society in ethics paper number 4, as well as onto the topics of essay. So guys, this is about the GS folder today, and as yesterday was Sunday and there was no mains question, so guys, we will also not be seeing the mains framework today. So guys, that's it, and now let's go to the newspaper analysis. Now friends, first of all, let's take the overview of the entire paper first. First of all guys, here we can see that the proposals from China are still awaiting. So guys, in this respect, we will see the FDA changes that have been made. Now guys, here the Chief Minister of Rajasthan had sent a new memo to the governor for with respect to the summoning of session. If you remember yesterday, we had seen the Nebam Rabia judgment of 2016 with respect to the discretionary power of governor under article number 163. So guys, that thing is important. However, in today's article, nothing substantial has been given. Now guys, here yesterday the Prime Minister has made the broadcast Man Ki Baat, and there it has been said that we should remember the Jawans, whatever we are doing, whatever we are speaking. However, guys, yesterday it was the Kargil Vijay Divas which was celebrated, and it was the 21st Kargil Vijay Divas. So guys, in 1999 there was the confrontation between the India and Pakistan, because the Pakistan carried the Operation Badr in 1999 and sent the Pakistani armed forces under the guise of Kashmiri militias, and then the confrontation began where India decisively defeated the Pakistan. Then guys, moving forward, we can see that nothing important news has been given and only the COVID related news has been there. Now guys, this particular article talks about the clogging of the drainage into Delhi. But with the help of this particular article, we will see the entire concept of the urban flooding, which could be asked into our exam. Then guys, moving forward, again we can see that nothing important news has been given here, so we'll just continue to move on. Now guys, here the Nag River has been mentioned, which has been turned into a major pollutant river. So, guys, Nag River is in Nagpur, and because of this Nag River only, Nagpur city got its name, and because of the pollution, it is being called as the cursed lady. So, guys, just for reference, you can keep it into mind. However, nothing substantial has happened. Then, now we are into the editorial section. This particular editorial talks about the contempt of court. This article also talks about the contempt of court which has happened, and this article also talks about the contempt of court. So guys, all these articles will be same. Now this particular article talks about the governor's discretionary power, and guys, on to the first page itself I talked about the Nebam Rabia judgment of 2016, the discretionary power which we had already discussed into the yesterday's newspaper, that is on to the 26th of July. Comprehensively we had seen this article, so if you want you can see it from here also. Then guys, the fall of Hong Kong national security legislation has been mentioned. Now guys, here it is on journalism. We don't need to see this every Monday this article comes. Then guys, a revolution in policy mindset will see the policy prescriptions. However guys, moving forward, nothing important has been given, only the regional news has been given here. Then guys, after that again you can see only the regional news have been there. Now guys, here it has been said that imported vaccines will be fast tracked. So we know that various world countries are preparing the vaccine for COVID-19. Now guys, whenever a vaccine is to be imported, all trial data etc has to be generated new. But it has been said that for the COVID-19 vaccines, those process will be fast tracked. But how they will be fast tracked, the final notification is yet to come. So guys, just only for the reference you can see, however nothing substantial had happened here. Then guys, moving forward, uh, again on to the education plus. Usually important news are not there, but today NIRF has been mentioned, so in detail we'll be seeing this thing what has happened. Then guys, further going around, so nothing important. Showcase page not important for our exam. On world page, North Korea reported first infection, not important. However guys, here the hypersonic nuclear weapons have been mentioned, so we will see this thing. Then guys, on to the next page, money wise not important for the UPSC exam. Then the sports page, nothing news has been, no important news has been given here. So that's it. And now let's take the newspaper analysis in detail. Now starting up, so first news guys here is with respect to the FDI proposals from China which have not been cleared by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now guys, before going into the news, let's have some basics about the foreign direct investment. So guys, into the most simple terms, when a foreign national wants to invest capital in some Indian company or wants to establish a company in India, then that kind of investment will be called as the foreign direct investment. And why we need FDI? Because as it is coming from the overseas, much needed dollar or foreign exchange will be coming. Secondly, it will generate the employment opportunities. Thirdly, it will bring the better technology transfer, managerial skills, etc. Now guys, there are sectoral limits for different sectors. It means that how much percentage of ownership a foreign company or a foreign person can hold. For example, for the construction sector it is 100%. It means that the entire ownership can be held by one foreign company. Then one more example guys, recently under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, government has enhanced the FDI into the defense. Earlier guys, what was the scenario? It was 49%, now it has been enhanced to 74%. Okay guys, so it means that earlier 49% of ownership could be held by the foreign company, now 74% can be held. Further, these sectoral limits could be of two types. They could be through automatic route or they could be through government route. Now automatic route means that you need not to take any prior statutory approvals, just bring your money and start take the ownership. However, government route means that yes, FDI is allowed, but for that FDI you need to take the permission from the government. Now guys, there could be third scenario where it could be the mix of automatic route plus government route. I will give you just one example. Now guys, before the recent FDI reforms which came into the defense sector, what was the scenario? Up to 49% it was through automatic route, that 49% ownership you don't need to seek permission. And in some specific very restricted categories, government even allowed the ownership beyond 49% if technology is some major breakthrough. But then government will give its own approval on the merits of the case. However, guys, as we had seen that under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, government itself enhanced the limit to 74% by automatic route, which means that into the present time up to 74% can come without the government approval. However, guys, moving forward, now guys, see, this is one thing. After that, there is one security clearance also which is to be taken, and it is given by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now guys, whatever we have talked here, automatic route, government route, this is onto the economic consideration. But guys, beyond these economic considerations, there is also the consideration of FDI which can impact India's defense, sovereignty, security, etc. So there is one more layer of clearance. Now guys, there are two types of sector, non-critical sectors and the critical sectors. So after whatever you are entitled, automatic or government, you, if you fall into the critical sector, you need to take additional security clearance. Now some examples of the critical sector are defense, media, satellites, private security agencies, civil aviation, etc. So guys, see, in a defense, you can bring FDI up to 74%, but still you need to take a security clearance. Okay, guys. So this is the scenario which is going on. Now, what has happened? In April, government amended the FDI policy. Now, according to this new FDI policy, it was said, see, there are the countries which make a border with India, and if any investment from these countries is coming, then even for the non-critical sector they need to take the approval. And guys, because of this particular thing, see, 200 proposals have came from China, but they have struck for the security clearance because China makes a border. Now guys, this particular thing will be having a very big impact because more than 8 billion cumulative investment had been made by China in the India. Now, guys, this particular limitation was imposed to prevent the opportunistic takeovers. It means there were reports that certain Chinese companies are thinking to hold the strategic ownership into Indian corporates because their financial condition is weak. So, in order to prevent this thing, it has been imposed. But, guys, as the standoff at the LAC unfolded, there are a lot of speculation and a lot of uncertainty going into this sector. So guys, that's all about this particular news, and now we'll move to next. Now guys, this particular article talks about the flooding of roads into the aftermath of recent rains. And guys, this is annual phenomena. Every year the same thing happens. But this particular article we will utilize for our GS paper number 3, disaster management, under the topic of the urban flooding, which is becoming a recurrent phenomena into the Indian cities. You might remember the Chennai floods were also the example of the urban flooding. Now, guys, see, these are certain common points with respect to urban flooding. You can write into any answer, it is not specific to a particular city. Now, guys, first of all, according to Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, urban flooding means the submergence of usually dry areas by large amount of water that can come due to number of factors. It could be due to the excessive and sudden rainfall, could be due to overflowing river or lake, melting of snow, or some exceptionally high tide. So guys, these are the common definition of the urban flooding. Now, urban flooding, we know it causes two type of damages. It could be the primary damage and it could be the secondary damage. Primary damage is the instant loss of life and property, whereas secondary damage includes the loss of tourism potential, loss of harvest, contamination of water, further spread of contagious diseases due to which even more people will die, etc. So guys, urban flooding, now it is different from the rural flooding or the natural flooding which comes into the secluded areas, because urban flooding is characterized by, number one, it is a sudden event, number two, the vulnerability here is more, and number three, losses are very much substantial. Now guys, see, what could be the common reasons? Reason number one is over concretization, over build up, which leads to two problem. Number one, due to the concretization, it is hard for water to percolate into the groundwater table, and guys, due to this thing the quantity of water increases. Secondly, paved pathways and bituminous roads provides the frictionless flow of water, due to which into less time more and more water can collect into the potholes or the regions which have the low lying inundation. So guys, this is a problem here. Second problem is that into the past few years there is rapid and unplanned growth of the urban centers, the problem of unplanned urbanization, and because of this the water bodies around the city margins, they have been disappeared. Now guys, earlier these water bodies were acting as the buffer zones to absorb excess quantity of water, but now they are absent and all that water end up into the cities. Then the third problem is the encroachment over the storm water drains, which were made to carry the excess water. But now, guys, the slum creation has taken place over them. And if I give you the example of Delhi alone, then over 3,700 kilometer of storm water drains, substantial points have been chalked by people living onto these water drains. After that, there is also problem with respect to the sewage networks, as they have been obsolete and they have turned overwhelmed, and whenever the substantial rain comes, they also overflow, which assist or aid in even more flooding. Then guys, see, this is the classical problem, that is the multiplicity of agencies. Now there are the public work departments, then there are the irrigation and flood control department, there are different municipal corporations. For example, in Delhi there is South Delhi, North Delhi, East Delhi, New Delhi, and often they are at crossroads or conflict due to the political or ideological or economical disputes. And guys, the implementation of the flood control program is not effective. Then guys, the sixth is the redundant drainage master plans. Now here, if we talk about Delhi, then the drainage master plan for NCT of Delhi was prepared in 1976 when the population of Delhi was just 60 lakh. But now the population of Delhi is more than 3 crore, and still such a redundant master plan is being used. Now guys, because of all these particular things, the urban flooding happens, and you can write it anywhere if a question comes. Now coming specifically to the urban flooding in Delhi. So guys, the reasons are same as we had seen. What could be the way forward? The way forward number one is that the redundant drainage master plan should be changed, and in place the renewed NCT drainage master plan should be installed. Now guys, in 2018 IIT Delhi provided a new master plan for drainage pattern, but still it has not been implemented. So focus should be made that this plan should come through. Secondly, guys, the Delhi Development Authority should coordinate the efforts among the multiple agencies onto the issues of the urban flood management, and a kind of a convergence should come here. Then, guys, thirdly, there should be the rejuvenation of the wetlands and the buffer rivers and rivulets which lie into the vicinity of Delhi. Then, fourthly, an alternative urban landscape policy is needed. For example, guys, the footpaths are paved with the slabs of stone. Rather, they should be paved with the grasses, which can act as the zones where water can percolate. Moreover, there should be the shade belts ridden dotted by the trees, so that they can also aid into the better percolation of the water. So guys, these are some specific solutions in this particular regard. Now there could be one more very interesting observation, and on these lines now the UPSC is also asking the question. Guys, there are so much problem into the Delhi, but why still major urban flood has not been noted on Delhi onto the lines of Chennai, onto the lines of Mumbai, etc. So guys, one unique reason for Delhi is the geographical or topographical advantage. Now the location of Delhi is such that being at the juncture of the Aravalli range, the Delhi is located at a point where there is a slope towards the west side and towards the east side, and the excess water flows into the Yamuna river onto the eastern sides, and onto the western sides it flows into the rivulets into the Najafgarh region, which finally empties again into the Yamuna region. So guys, this comparative advantage of slope or topography is enjoyed by the Delhi. So guys, that's all about this particular topic, and there could be a probable question either in GS1 or GS3 on these lines also. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now friends, we are into the editorial section, and here we have clubbed the three editorials as all of them are talking on to the single topic, that is the contempt of the court. Now guys, this entire controversy started when the activist come lawyer Prashant Bhushan made a tweet where he shared the photograph of the Chief Justice of India riding a motorbike. There he questioned the integrity of the CGI and his supposedly connection with the political parties. Now, guys, this particular matter has been noted by the Supreme Court, and a suo motu contempt notice has been sent to the Prashant Bhushan. Further, guys, here not only for the present case the issue has been tagged, rather earlier also Prashant Bhushan had made the tweets and comments onto the judiciary. For them also the action will be now taken. So guys, in all these articles it has been explored that whether the contempt is required into a free democracy or not. So all these issues will be taking. However, guys, certain personal remarks and personal comments have also been given. They are not required for the UPSC. We will not be taking it, and you also avoid that because it scandalizes your answers. Now, guys, starting with the contempt from the very scratch. Now, guys, first of all, contempt means to show disregard towards a particular person or towards a particular institution. Now, guys, when the British political system evolved, then the English common law emerged. And as per English common law, it was said that people should have ultimate trust into the judiciary. And for this ultimate trust, see, there were two ingredients. First of all, judiciary itself needs to be impartial, and even people should also think that the judiciary is impartial. So, under the common law, a dictum emerged that is to be impartial and universally thought so. But, guys, what if somebody deliberately makes a statement or issues a report where deliberately he is targeting the judiciary? And, guys, if everybody starts to do this, then people will lose the faith into the judiciary. So, therefore, to judiciary, a tool was given, that is judiciary can punish a person if somebody is deliberately contempting the court. So, guys, the power of contempt of court came to the judiciary. And as different democracy, different judicial systems evolved, they also adopted the power of contempt of court for their judiciary. Now, guys, coming into the Indian context, so in India there is also the contempt of court, and with respect to the constitution, it has been mentioned in some articles. For example, article number 129 gives a power to the Supreme Court to punish somebody for the contempt. Similarly, article number 215 gives power to the High Court that it can punish somebody for the contempt. And, guys, again, article number 142 also again talks that Supreme Court can investigate and can punish for the contempt of court. But, guys, at the same time, neither into our constitution the definition of the contempt of court has been given, nor the elaborate provisions with respect to the contempt of court has been given. It has just been mentioned. So, therefore, there was a need that a proper legislative framework should come into this particular regard. Therefore, Parliament passed the Contempt of Court Act of 1971, which actually makes the legal framework for the contempt of court. And here, under section number 2, two types of contempt has been mentioned, that is the civil contempt and the criminal contempt. Now, civil contempt is one where a person is willfully disobeying the court's direction, judgment, decree, or order. And, guys, in that particular case, the court can issue the civil contempt. However, on another hand, there is also the criminal contempt where it has been provided that if somebody makes a publication, now this publication could be written, could be oral, could be printed, etc, and by through that, if a person is trying to scandalize the judiciary, try to lower the authority of judiciary, it tries to develop the prejudices against the judiciary, or if it is simply interfering into the course of judiciary, then the judiciary can slap the person with the criminal contempt. Now, guys, see, out of these two types of contempt, there is a criticism over the criminal contempt, because here it is being said that how we can identify that actual scandalization had happened. There could be the controversy whether a person was exercising his fundamental right under Article 19, that is freedom of speech and expression, or he was actually scandalizing. And even take the present issue, the lawyer Prashant Bhushan, he says that I was exercising my speech where I was raising the legitimate questions, and judiciary sees it as an act of scandalization. So, guys, there have been the issues. And now, moving forward, guys, the Contempt of Court Act of 1971 has also been added in 2006. Now, see, friends, into this particular act, there is a section number 13 where the restrictions on the contempt power has been imposed, the point where Supreme Court cannot use that power. And here a new ground has been added by 2006 amendment, that is defense of truth. So, guys, if a person was talking the truth, then on its defense, the contempt of court cannot also be issued. So this thing was added. So guys, this is entire legislative, constitutional, historical framework of the contempt. You need not to go anywhere beyond this thing. Now guys, coming to the present crisis. So now I had told you that the criminal contempt has always been a problem. So guys, a lot of issues had developed. First of all, as now the three bench Supreme Court judge had issued the contempt notice to Prashant Bhushan, a question comes that into the times of pandemic, judiciary was already suspended and there are various impending matters such as the validity of the Citizenship Amendment Act. Then what about the habeas corpus pleas which have been made into the aftermath of Jammu and Kashmir matter? Then the matter of electoral bond have also been issued into the court. So guys, these constitutionally important matters are there, and judiciary, rather than focusing on them, is involving into the contempt. So is it good given the urgency of the matters right now? Then guys, see, the other issue is the classic debate, that is, what about fundamental right under article number 19, where freedom of speech and expression has been given? Guys, there are two things. You could be a procedural democracy or you could be a substantive democracy. Now, on procedural ground, India is a democracy because we have the constitution, we have given the rights, we have the separation. But substantive means that whether those rights, those institutions are being used into the democratic manner or not. So, onto the ground of substantive democracy, it has been seen that though there are sometimes a tool available with the different organs, but they should not use those tools to cripple the fundamental rights. And guys, here into the contempt of court, you are outrightly crippling the fundamental rights. So it raises a question mark whether the India is a substantive democracy or not. Guys, however, there is a counter also, that under article number 19 only, it has been provided that this right is not absolute and will only be subject to other provisions of the constitution. And under article 129 and 215, specifically the contempt has been mentioned. So anyhow, it could be taken, but still keep in mind that you should not do a thing simply because you can do it. Also important for your ethics. Then guys, third issue comes about the accountability. See, many a times it is said that why judiciary gets so nudged up when somebody raises a question mark onto the judiciary. Here it is said that judiciary is trying to shed off the accountability by charging everyone under the contempt. And guys, here there is a one very popular case, that is Bridges versus California. Now this was the US judgment. Here it was said that an enforced silence will give rise or will cause suspicion, contempt, and will take away the respect of the institution. So guys, it has been said that again, simply if you have power, you should not silence the people or the proponents. Then guys, third issue comes that into the contempt of court legislation, there is a problem that suo motu power has been given to the judiciary. And as far as there will be the suo motu powers, judiciary will always be using it and the problems will become worse. And then fifthly guys, it is that many a times a contempt is also issued by the judiciary because there happens to be the rivalry between the lawyer and the judiciary. So right now onto the contempt bench, there is Justice Mishra, and there has been the history of conflicts between Justice Mishra and Prashant Bhushan. So it could also be an act of a personal rivalry. However, guys, just use the word of personal rivalry, don't use any name. So guys, these are the broader issues with respect to the issue of contempt. Now guys, see, what could be solution in this particular case? We can't tell right now, but to equip you with better weapons, I will give you certain more Supreme Court judgments which comes onto the matter of contempt, so that you can use it into your answer and can take a stand according to the tone of question. So the first is Duda PN versus Shiv Shankar judgment. Here Supreme Court said that the contempt power should not be used by judges to uphold their own dignity or their personal image. It should only be used when the image of the institution as a whole is being questioned. So guys, into this particular matter also, we need to explore whether contempt is being issued for safeguarding the image of the Chief Justice as a person or as an institution. Now guys, the next is the Otto Shankar case. Now, here the Supreme Court reaffirmed the Sullivan Doctrine. So, guys, the Sullivan Doctrine is very famous. It said that all the public person as well as institution should be open to stringent comments and accusation as far as they are being made into the bona fide intentions, even if they happen to be untrue. So, guys, such kind of criticisms should not be shelled away. So, this particular thing was said here. So, guys, on to the basis of these judgments, Supreme Court judgments, and the entire background, we can adopt a middle path where we can say that the independence and the faith of people in judiciary is of paramount, but at the same time, it should not be made onto the foundation of the sacrifice of fundamental rights such as freedom of speech and expression. So, guys, these are the all issues involved with the contempt starting from the history to the present times. Friends, on my personal advice, please don't go beyond that, because after that it will not be usable for the scope of our exam. So, guys, that's it about this issue, and now we'll move to next. Now, this particular article talks about changing the policy actions into the aftermath of pandemic. So, right now, into the form of COVID-19, we are seeing one of the worst pandemic, because, guys, the quantum of devastation is very huge. There is economic devastation because of the lockdown. The economic activities are virtually on to the standstill. Then there is the health devastation because the health systems have been collapsed into the countries. Then there is the social devastation because people have lost their livelihood, their families, their well-being. And, guys, there are the psychological and the mental devastation among the morale of the people. Now, in all this context, guys, if you remember, we had taken a pledge to achieve the sustainable developmental goals in 2015, which were to be reached till 2030. So there were 17 goals which had 169 targets in them, and they spanned on all sectors, the social, health, economic, other things. And we see that these are all the sectors which are into the turmoil right now. So what to be done? So alternative developmental strategies are needed. Now, guys, just recently there was a virtual high level political forum on sustainable development where the governments, institutions, NGO, and various stakeholders come together as what should be the strategy into the times of the pandemic. Now, certain workable strategies have been mentioned here, which we can use as a template in our answer onto the post pandemic development. Now, guys, first it has been said that now countries have an excuse to extend the universal health care and the social protection schemes to all the people, because it will be bringing two benefits. First of all, immediate relief will be coming, and secondly, by this thing, the capacity of the masses will be enhanced, due to which the economic recovery will come back. Secondly, there should be the regular data affirmation. It means whatever step government is now taking, it should be collaborated with the data to see which thing is working, which thing is not working. So, guys, evidence based policy making should be there now. Then the third is that, guys, into the aftermath of COVID-19, social discriminations are now reaching to one more territory where people are adopting a kind of a segregation with the people who have been infected with the COVID-19. So now, guys, onto the pretext of COVID-19, a larger sensitization of the people could be carried, and they can be taught that discrimination in any form is not good, not onto the basis of infection vulnerability, gender, caste, religion, color. All these things could be dispelled. Then, guys, this is also a time that government can make meaningful partnership with the private sector into the way of PPP, and, guys, various meaningful reforms by this particular way can be achieved. After that, guys, we had seen that the COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease. So now people should be sensitized onto this particular aspect. And, guys, the nexus between people and environment, which earlier was of exploitation only, now this nexus could be rectified, and people can be taught that the respectable distance with the environment and with ecology should be maintained. Then after that, guys, now the institutions are have to work on to the principle of efficiency, and various novel accountability related measures can also be installed, which into the long term will be empowering the welfareist democracies and the economies. So guys, these all are the general prescriptions. However, some specific examples can also be given. For example, South Korea into the aftermath of pandemic had started the New Deal, which is dependent on two pillars, that is the digitization and decarbonization. Digitization means that as far as possible, digital technologies, artificial intelligence, big data, digitization of records will be carried, and decarbonization is achieving the growth by the renewable sources. Secondly, guys, various economies into the Indo-Pacific are also focusing on blue recovery. Blue recovery means that as economy is shattered, it will be built back by utilizing the marine resources. And guys, finally, if we talk onto the domestic front, even India started one of the largest solar project in Riva and had showed to the world that India is also into the race towards the renewable recovery. And again, the example of China can also be taken, which is also working on to the renewable energy fronts. So guys, this is a generalistic prescription with respect to going on to the developmental parameters into the post pandemic world. So guys, readily could be used into the references. So that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now, guys, this particular article is criticizing the national security law which has been imposed onto the Hong Kong by the China. Now, guys, this article is outright criticism. However, just 3 days back, we had discussed this entire issue on 24th July at this particular timestamp where we had seen the criticism as well as argument given by the China. So, guys, much more comprehensive picture you can get from here. So, you can refer to this and will not be wasting our time into the same repetition. So guys, that's it. Now we'll move to next. Now guys, here we can briefly see the NIRF 2020. So friends, we know that the enrollment ratio into the higher education has been improved, but still the quality of education being provided into the higher education institutions is not optimal. So therefore, in 2015, Ministry of Human Resource and Development decided that a competitive spirit should be instituted into the higher education institution, so that out of that competency there could be improvement into the learning teaching standards. And guys, for the first in 2016, the first national institutional ranking framework was announced. And guys, since then nearly 3700 higher education institutions are participating in every year, and these institutions are then ranked onto certain parameters. Now guys, basically there are the five parameters on which these institutions are ranked. They are the teaching, learning, and resource. Then it is the research and professional practice, graduation outcome, outreach and inclusivity, and perception. So guys, they all have their respective weight and the institutions are ranked. Now guys, NIRF 2020 has taken place here, and here it has been said that out of top 100 universities, 18 universities are from Tamil Nadu. So it depicts that the quality of higher education is substantially better into the South India, particularly into the Tamil Nadu. And all this thing can be attributed to certain factors. Number one, there is better awareness with respect to the higher education, and due to that thing, the higher education institutions are also providing the good quality education. Then guys, there have been the timely abidance to the exam schedule, due to which the outcomes have been increased and improved. Moreover guys, the fruit of reservation had actually percolated at the down levels, and therefore perception of the employers with respect to the education of South India is also good, and because of all these parameters, the institutions perform really well. Moreover, guys, even into the category of colleges, Tamil Nadu perform good. And out of 100 top colleges, 32 colleges are from the Tamil Nadu. So, guys, there is substantial improvement. Now, guys, it has been said that if institutions continuously they perform good onto the NIRF and the same competitive edge is pursued, then in a near future there could be a possibility that Indian universities or institution can get into the academic ranking of the world universities, as well as onto the QS world university ranking, which will be a very good achievement for the Indian higher education sector. So guys, that's all about this NIRF, and now we'll move to next. Now, guys, here we can see that the Russia will soon be getting the hypersonic nuclear weapons. Now, guys, first of all, the details with respect to the weaponry of Russia is not important for our exam. But what are these hypersonic nuclear weapons? So, guys, these are the missiles or those weapons which can travel faster than the speed of the sound, and the hypersonic missiles which Russia will be getting can travel 5 times more than the speed of the sound. Moreover, they are also characterized by very precise maneuverability as well as altitude and the targeting. Now, this particular precedence, guys, why it is important? Because if we see, then guys, into the background, just in 2019 USA had withdrew from the INF treaty, which stand for the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Now, guys, as a part of this particular treaty, there was a limitation on both the countries with respect to making the arsenal of nuclear weapon as well as onto the range of missiles. Moreover, USA has not only withdrew from the INF, but there is also a very important treaty between the Russia and USA, that is the START treaty. It stands for the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, and it is set to expire in 2021. Now there is a clause that it can further be extended to 5 years, but USA had said that they will not be extending the START treaty also with the Russia. So because of this particular thing, a trend could be observed when a new arm race or arms race 2.0 can begin into the major powers, that is the Russia and the United States, and that will be disturbing for the world peace. So these are the issues associated here. So that's it, and now we'll go to the question section. Friends, please pause the video and try to answer the question. So first question is with respect to the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. Please read the statement and identify the correct code. Question number 2 is with respect to the INDSAT. Please read the statement and identify the correct one. Question number 3 is with respect to the polity. So guys, please consider these statements into the light of power of taxation of the states. So please identify the correct code. And now the question number 4 is with respect to the Ajivika sect. Guys, please read the statement and identify the correct code. And now the mains question for today. So guys, this question is from GS paper number 2, and it is a 10 marker question. Question says that the law of contempt should be employed only to enable the court to function and not to prevent the criticism comment. So guys, please write it, and tomorrow we will see the framework of this particular question. So that's it, friends. I hope you are liking our discussion. Thank you so much.